Hello and welcome to this virtual annual members meeting. I'm Louise Robson, I'm Chief Executive here at Stockport NHS Foundation Trust. And actually I've probably been involved in annual members meetings of one sort or another for about 25 years. And this is the very first time that it's been done in this way with a virtual presentation. And of course, everything's different now, isn't it, with COVID-19? So we all adjust what we're doing on an ongoing basis. So this is the first part of our annual members meeting programme, and you will hear a much more involved session later on with some Q&A. But for now, this is an overview, if you like, of the year from me. I've been in post here for a year as Chief Executive, and before I joined the organisation I was really keen to come and lead a trust through a very significant improvement journey. And I was keen to do this in Stockport because for me we had a lot of the right ingredients for success. We had the right people, we had real commitment to improvement and change. And actually our first 12 months, so we're talking here about from April 2019 to the end of March 2020, has been a very, very turbulent time for us. So we face lots and lots of pressures on the organisation and on the system. We face significant pressures over the winter period, particularly in terms of our emergency department and the services that we provide. But we're actually facing those here and now challenges against a backdrop of really lack of investment over quite a significant period of time. So a lack of investment in basic equipment, in the estate, and actually also a lack of investment in our people, in developing people and their skills to make sure that we can be the very best organisation and provide the very best care that people in Stockport deserve. Despite the very significant challenges, I remain absolutely convinced that we can rise to the challenge and make sure that the improvements we need to deliver are absolutely in place. So this year has really been about adapting to immense and sustained pressures on the organisation, but also laying the foundations for change for the future. We've started to address some of the historic lack of investment that I've already mentioned. So we spent £2 million on some really quite basic equipment, but really essential. So things like electric beds, infusion pumps and so on. Essential things that we needed to do and replace. We've also started work on the estate, and we actually demolished two of our most aged wards, that's A12 and A15. So that's the start of a programme to really refresh the estate and ensure it's fit for purpose. Throughout the year we've made changes to our governance, to our board and to our executive team, but we're still on that journey and there's still much more to do in all of those areas. We worked really hard to attract additional funding, and actually about a year ago exactly we got a great piece of news that we were going to be awarded additional funding to the tune of 30.6 million for a capital project to completely refresh and revise our urgent and emergency care campus. So that was fantastic news. Now that was a year ago. We've done a lot of work ever since then on preparing the ground for that, particularly in terms of a business case that we will be submitting to the Treasury next month. But there's been a huge amount of work with architects and with our clinical teams around what services we're going to provide and what they will look like. And it's not just been about us within the trust, it's been about our colleagues in primary care, engaging the local authority, engaging local people. We've got a long way to go with that consultation process, but a fantastic opportunity for us for the future. It will completely transform the way we provide urgent and emergency care in Stockport. So in this year we've developed our new people strategy. That's really important because it's about how we're going to invest in our people, how we're going to ensure that our staff have the right and current skills and development opportunities to be able to provide the excellent care that we want to provide for our patients. It also will be about helping people not just to be part of that journey around change and improvement, but actually to lead it too. So again, having our staff ready to lead transformation and innovation so we can provide the services that we want to as an organisation. It also looks at how we retain staff, so recruiting the best calibre people is really important, but it doesn't help if we can't retain the best people to work here, so that's a key area of our strategy. And part of all of that together is about creating the right culture and environment within the organisation. So staff want to work here and know that they will be working within a supportive and improving culture, and they can really thrive here at Stockport NHS Foundation Trust. Our performance against national standards in 2019-20 was really disappointing. We didn't step up to the mark and didn't deliver the standards of services and care that we wanted to deliver and that our local people deserve. We faced a significant and sustained pressure on our emergency department and our systems, and at the point when the Care Quality Commission, our regulator, came to inspect our services towards the end of January, we were at the highest level of escalation that it's possible for any NHS organisation to be in. Our staff had relentlessly stepped up to the plate, looking after patients and really working their socks off for month in and month out. And at Christmas and New Year we had a really challenging time, so we didn't have the system flow that we needed, and the flow within the hospital wasn't what it needed. So CQC arrived. They were with us through end of January and well into February. And actually they decided that we remained as an organisation as requires improvement. And what that meant in practice is that they came back with 26 recommendations that described the must-do actions that we had to take immediate steps around, and another 54 actions that were should-do actions, which again are really important for us. So there is much for us to be getting on with, a lot of change that we need to deliver. And it's clear that for all the fact that our teams worked as hard as they did, we didn't sustain the improvements that had been made from 2017 into 2018 when we were faced with such pressure. So there's a lot to do there in terms of our improvement journey. One of the key areas that we have in Stockport is an increasingly elderly population. Now that's not unique to us. Right across the country, it's something that all health and care services are experiencing. It often brings with it some really complex needs to make sure that we can do our very best for older people. It's a whole system issue as much as it is an issue for us in the hospital, and we've really found that a challenge, particularly when we haven't always got the staff with the right skills and the right experience to be able to look after patients in the way we absolutely want and need to. There are national shortages of staff geared up to providing those roles, and we in Stockport are sitting in the shadow of some big organisations that can recruit, develop and retain those staff. So it becomes even more important that we have that improvement agenda at the forefront of our minds. As well as older people, we've also experienced a year-on-year increase in referrals for patients who may have cancer. Now, there were some changes to national protocols last year, and that's increased the number of referrals very, very significantly. In addition to that, it also affects the number of patients who are waiting for diagnostic tests to actually give that evidence of whether they actually have cancer and need treatment. Those challenges are not just with us in Stockport, but they place a very significant burden on the organisation, on our capacity, on our staff and workforce, and also on our finances. And these are things that we can't address entirely on our own. In terms of partnership working, which I've mentioned is absolutely essential, and particularly around the fact that we can't address all of the issues as a trust ourselves, one of the real benefits that coping with the COVID pandemic has brought to the fore is the really strong partnerships that are developing at all different levels in the system. So if I start by talking about colleagues and the way that we're working within Stockport, and that includes linking up with High Peak and North Derbyshire as well, the very close working relationships that we've forged across Stockport Metropolitan Borough Council, the Clinical Commissioning Group, a whole raft of colleagues that come together on a very regular basis, and at one point it was 7 days a week, every day relentlessly, to understand the challenges and the pressures. Those sort of changes in working relationship are really starting to bear fruit now. We never want to go back to where we were before, where partnership working wasn't necessarily a strength for the patch. So it's a great opportunity to be able to really build on the improvements that we've made through COVID. But we're not just working with colleagues in Stockport. We're also working right across the hospital sector and with all our colleagues in the other hospital trusts in Greater Manchester. And we call that arrangement the Greater Manchester Hospital Cell. And it's that very, very close working relationship that served us so well throughout the first phase of the COVID pandemic. We've been able to rely on mutual aid, where we've all been helping each other out with things like PPE, with equipment, with staff and skills, and really making sure that those arrangements, even when they're not needed through the pandemic arrangements, absolutely carry forward the way that we want to work in partnership in the future. We've been working very closely with colleagues through the Healthier Together programme for a number of years now, and it's really important for us that we get Healthier Together implemented in a way that absolutely cements our role as the hub site for acute services in the southeast sector of Greater Manchester. So despite COVID, a lot of those broader strategic pieces of work are continuing. And we've worked very closely with colleagues in East Cheshire Trust too, particularly through COVID, but increasingly in looking at service sustainability and options for the way forward. There's still a very long way to go with a lot of those partnership arrangements, but we've set out a really good starting point, and we'd want to see that really continuing to gain momentum and develop for the future. So when I joined the organisation in 2019, there'd already been a lot of work undertaken on a new strategy for the organisation. I was really keen that we took an opportunity to just reset that strategy based on some of the changes that were happening nationally and regionally. So there was a lot of work undertaken last year to develop the strategy and to be ready to take that forward. One of the really important features for me was about how we engaged people in the development of the work around the strategy. A strategy isn't just a document that sits on a shelf. It absolutely guides the way that we take decisions, guides people's objectives and guides the way that we move forward as an organisation. And one of the things I'm most proud of from last year is the process we used to really engage our staff in the development of the vision and values for the organisation. So out of 5,500 staff, around 3,500 participated in making their contribution and shaping the way that we develop the vision for the organisation, and particularly the values that we've set that we want to really live by. So that was a really good example of how I want things to be done differently in the organisation in the future. We finalised the overall trust strategy, and that was approved at Trust Board back in March 2020. We're about to launch the final version of that strategy, and that will be with our staff and with stakeholders, patients and others. But the next really key piece of the work that we need to do is around the development of a clinical strategy. So at the moment, we're developing quite a broad brush clinical strategy which sets the principles around which we want to provide care for our patients. That will then be taken forward by each multidisciplinary team in specialties right across the organisation as they envisage what their organisation contribution's going to be, and really sort of think about the service that they want to provide for the future. So they'll be able to do that throughout this year as we really shape up a very comprehensive look at the organisation and our services. And doing that will be a major step forward in achieving our long-term strategic goals as an organisation. So it seemed that no sooner had the Care Quality Commission concluded their assessment of the trust and our services that we were thrown immediately into the preparation for the first wave of the COVID pandemic. And within a matter of only 2 weeks, we completely transformed the organisation. So wards were looking after different type of patients than they would normally do. We rapidly stood up our intensive care capacity, so we went from having 12, 13 beds to being able to flex up to 60 beds to look after COVID patients. We had new ways of working right across the organisation. So instead of patients coming in for outpatient appointments, we had telephone consultations and then virtual clinics. Lots and lots of change, an amazing amount of innovation, and our teams really standing up and taking on the challenge and the leadership journey around that. Unfortunately, like the rest of the country, we had to suspend our elective work. And many of the teams that would have been looking after patients who required elective treatment were part of the effort around COVID. So for example, some of our surgeons and other consultants elected to work as part of the intensive care team and undertook some additional training and support to be geared up and ready to do that. We had school nurses who came and worked as part of the hospital team, and a number of them in particular actually developed the patient liaison service which is a brand new service that we again implemented in very, very short period of time. And that's been absolutely essential for families who haven't been able to visit their relatives when they've been patients in the trust because of COVID regulations. And they've been absolutely the lifeblood of that communication, which is fantastic. We've welcomed back retired nursing staff who've been working with us. And we've had so many people who've been working in different teams, in different roles. One example is colleagues from our wheelchair services who have come in and been trained and have been providing trusted assessor roles in our integrated transfer team, helping to safely discharge patients. So it's been a phenomenal effort, and we've rapidly transformed and improved services that under other circumstances would have taken probably years to do if we'd been doing it on our normal processes. The thing for me that all of this has pointed to is just how brilliant our staff have been under very, very difficult circumstances. I'm so proud of what they've all done, really gearing up and making sure we were ready to look after our patients with COVID on the patch. Many people may have thought that those challenges would be too much for our teams working under the kind of pressure that they have, but the opposite's been true. They have absolutely been fantastic in the way that they've taken on that challenge. We know that living with COVID is the next phase that we're going into as a country and right across the world. It's likely we'll see further peaks, and after a hugely challenging year with some amazing dedication from our staff, I'm confident that despite the very significant challenges, as we develop an ever more strengthening board and executive team, as our relationships with partners get stronger and stronger, that we'll be able to really work differently in meeting the needs of our patients and local people. We absolutely need to build a new normal. We don't want to go back to the past. We don't want to simply put in place what we had in place before. This is about what we can do that's better for patients, better for local people, better for our staff, and better for the organisation. Along with the rest of the country, we are currently working on our recovery plans, and that's very much about what our services will look like as they start to come back on stream. We're working not only as an organisation in Stockport, but with all of our partners about the implications of how we do that, coordinating our efforts, making sure that we all have a line of sight about improvements to come. We're also working, as I mentioned, with the Greater Manchester Hospital Cell, so we're working and moving in lockstep with other trusts across Greater Manchester to make sure that we coordinate bringing back our services and we have an equality of access for local people around the services that are available. None of us want to go back to some of the challenges we faced in 2019, and the changes that we have made since then, the changes that our partners have made, particularly in our relationship building, really gives a hope and an encouragement, if you like, for the future in terms of the potential for us to really successfully tackle those long-standing challenges. From a personal perspective, although this has been an incredibly challenging year, I'm heartened by the people that we have here, the people that I absolutely know will be able to step up and really help transform the organisation. I'm confident that despite the challenges that we will continue to face, that we've got some fantastic people that will really help move the organisation and its services forward. This is about how we do so in collaboration, about how we embrace the challenges that health and care are facing right across the organisation, And by doing that very much as part of wider partnerships, I'm confident that we'll be able to achieve all of our ambitions for the future. Thank you.